And you'd stand at the first tee first thing in the morning and sell them back.
See, for me, Catherine, this was pocket money.
Yeah.
So if I can recall correctly, the small Fanta bottles were like 4 cents. The large Coke bottles, they were 8 cents. Small change, but if you had enough of them, you could actually get a bit of money.
I seem to remember doing this for school fundraising, going around people's and, collecting them. So, but I remember I've got a bit of trivia for you. So the Trivial Pursuit inventors, in fact, were down to, they'd invented this game, but they hadn't sold it yet. They'd sort of put it out with various sort of game makers, game companies, and they were so broke, they were down to rummaging around for bottles that they could sell so they could survive. And they got the contract, which what became Trivial Pursuit.
Unbelievable.
And it's stories like this that make me very good at Trivial Pursuit.
Unbelievable. What a great link.
I know.
So do you think it should happen? Do you think this should happen?
I do. I actually really like it. I think it's a sensible thing. And looking at how they sort of work it out so that the sort of pays for itself by the bottles that aren't recycled and reclaimed, aren't claimed back from monetary reasons. It seems very sensible. Incentives.
Barbara says something very interesting here, that we used to have the bottle washing plants then, and the bottles were refilled. We don't have that anymore. Maybe we should bring them back as well. But I'm trying to think, Mike, of the downside to this. Someone says recycling bottles just gives people a false sense of doing something worthwhile. There's nothing circular about plastic. We just don't need plastic bottles at all. Is that a fair point?
No,
because that was about glass bottles, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm fully supportive of the recycling of any material. Good opinion, but no, I think it adds something to society as well about teaching us how to, even if we have to drag people with that carrot, I think it's great.
Just finally, a brief response on this. The parents of bullies, fining them, is it ridiculous or is it a good idea? This from an article in the New York Times about a novel proposal in the US city of Wisconsin Rapids. Parents may face up to $475 New Zealand dollars in fines and fees if their children bully others. Now, doing this alerts parents to be fully aware of their children's behaviour and be active in changing it. It's modelled on another nearby city that does have these fines, but to date haven't been used yet. So what do you think, Catherine? Bullying's horrible and can be devastating for kids and teens, but how much of it can be blamed on the parents?
Well, I think it's got to start with the family, surely. The school is not, it is not an sort of an absent parent. It doesn't, a stand-in parent, a proxy parent. It doesn't have to sort of like perform that role. It does, but it shouldn't. And so, fining the parents, no, I think that's absolutely draconian. But, working with the parents to be able to help the children.
Why is it draconian? Because one supporter said the idea, if parents pay for an item that their child breaks in a store, then they should also be held responsible if their child is bullying other students.
Can the parents afford it? What's going on in that family's circumstance? It could be an absolute horrendous thing to do to some families, and then there could be other families for it say, oh yeah, that's my bullying tax, and I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to sort my child out.
Last resort for me, I think, obviously compulsory family counselling would be great. And also I think it depends on the age. I think younger kids, you can do that too. Teenagers, insouciant teenagers, I'm not sure if a parent fine's going to be effective.
All right, fair enough. Boy,
agree.
It's been a heck of a panel this afternoon on a Friday. Hope you enjoyed it. I have. Catherine Robertson and Mike Ruhu, thank you very much for being with us.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. Back Monday. See ya.
Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. On tonight's programme, gasps in the public gallery as the man accused of the Mosque massacres pleads not guilty to all charges against him. Where there is Oranga Tamariki takes a 6-year-old Pākehā girl from her Pasifika foster parents. Is this about race? Despite insisting there was no more money for teachers, the government's found some more money, $271 million more. Canterbury's DHB's budget blowout of more than $100 million buys them a financial babysitter, and 2 tauranga kura cop criticism for using te reo on the netball court. Murupara's cashing in on a last chance money machine, and you've heard of a bull in a china shop. How about a stag in a caravan?
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leia tawa tēnei. Victims and families audibly gasped in court today as the man accused of the Christchurch Mosque attacks pleaded not guilty to dozens of charges of murder and attempted murder and one of terrorism. Brenton Tarrant smiled via video link from Auckland Prison at Pāremoremo when his lawyer entered the not guilty pleas in the High Court at Christchurch this morning. Conan Young reports.
Inside court, the accused appeared on a television screen wearing a grey jumper. The public gallery was completely packed with 2 overflow courtrooms made available for 140 members of the public. Mental health reports found the 28-year-old was fit to plead, instruct counsel and stand trial. One of his defence lawyers, Shane Tate, entered not guilty pleas to the 92 charges. There are 51 murder charges, 40 attempted murder charges and 1 of terrorism. He was remanded in custody with an administrative hearing set down for August the 15th. A trial date of May the 4th next year was set. This is scheduled to last 6 weeks. Kei Ototahi Aho, ko Conan Young tēnei.
A 33-year-old man has been arrested and charged with disorderly behaviour after a scuffle outside Christchurch's Justice Precinct this morning. Members of the Muslim community were speaking to media shortly before 11 o'clock after the court appearance when they were approached by a man who appeared to make race-related threats. He was led away by corrections and police officers. The police say the man was due to appear in Christchurch District Court this afternoon. The primary and secondary teachers' unions are recommending their members accept the government's new pay offer. At its core, the new deal puts primary and secondary teachers on equal footing, pay-wise, with a $271 million one-off cash injection to achieve pay parity. Here's political reporter Yvette McCullough.
The new deal includes a unified base salary scale for primary, secondary and area school teachers. The NZEI President, Linda Stewart, says protecting pay parity is crucial and current teachers' base salaries will increase by at least 18.5% by July 2021. The PPTA President, Jack Boyle, says a new top salary step of $90,000 for secondary school teachers and more money for those taking on extra duties will help address recruitment and retention issues. The deal also includes an accord to work out how to address workload pressures. Both unions say while the deal hasn't delivered everything they wanted, it is a significant improvement. From Parliament, Yvette McCullough.
The Green Party co-leader, Marama Davidson, believes changes to Oranga Tamariki's Uplift process are well overdue. Maori lawyers, midwives, social workers and academics have put out an urgent call to the government to change Oranga Tamariki's policy around uplifting tamariki from their whānau. The Green Party co-leader, Marama Davidson, says ministers need to listen to the public.
I know that midwives, iwi, Māori organisations, that there are a lot of solutions and the focus needs to be on prioritising babies to stay safely with their mothers and families. And so that's what we need to be doing now, is working together towards fixing this.
Marama Davidson says the generational trauma of these removals cannot be underestimated. Netball New Zealand says it has no problem with te reo Maori being spoken on the netball court. The comment follows two kura in Tauranga saying parents and coaches from other teams have told them not to speak Maori during games because they can't understand them. Te Whare Kura o Moao is calling on top netball officials to support and promote te reo Maori and to have bilingual signage at netball centres. Netball New Zealand spokesperson Kate Agnew says they support te reo Maori being spoken during games and on the sideline.
It's disappointing that these kinds of situations have arisen, and so quite clearly this is something that we need to go back and revisit and reinforce the messaging and the position of Netball New Zealand.
Ms Agnew says she likes the idea of bilingual signage and will look into what else they can do to make their stance clear. Aucklanders face a busier commute this evening after disruptions to air travel and the city's rail network today. Travellers had to contend with heavy fog, flight delays around the country, and the rail network at a standstill for 3 hours. About 100 domestic flights as well as a handful of international flights were disrupted by thick fog at Auckland Airport this morning. The fog lifted by mid-morning, but just after 11, all trains stopped for 3 hours due to a signal failure caused by a power outage. Auckland Transport says there will still be some disruption to some peak hour services this evening. RNZ caught up with some frustrated passengers at the Britomart station during the shutdown.
I took the train on my very precious day off. I was told the signals are down, I can't get back home.
My trains were actually cancelled this morning as well, so I Ubered into work, but I've just come in there cancelled again.
I was actually on the way here to come to class, and then in between Parental and Britomart we got stuck for an hour, so I'm just going home now instead of going to class.
AT says people with HOP cards will be automatically refunded if they travelled during the disruption. Those with paper tickets can claim refunds at customer service centres. Meanwhile, Met Service is warning anyone travelling tonight that fog is forecast to develop over Christchurch and Hamilton. It's coming up to 6 minutes past 5. The Toronto Raptors have become the first Canadian team to win the NBA basketball title with a 114-110 win over two-time defending champions, the Golden State Warriors. The win gives the Raptors a 4-2 series win and denies the Warriors a fourth NBA championship in 5 years. Kyle Lowry, a mainstay of the Raptors for the past 7 years, says the victory is not only for Toronto but all of Canada.
That's surreal, man. I can't really think right now. This is crazy. This is awesome, man. Toronto, Canada, we brought it home, baby. We brought it home.
Raptors forward Kawhi Leonard was named the NBA Finals Most Valuable Player. With just 4 wins from 12 games, there's been little for the Warriors to smile about this season, but skipper Roger Tuivasa-Sheck says putting a smile on players' faces has been a focus at training this week. The Warriors play the Titans on the Gold Coast tonight, and Tuivasa-Sheck says coach Stephen Kearney has been trying to make sure they enjoy themselves.
He feels like that's the best way we play our footy, and I believe it. When we're out there throwing the ball around, running and just having fun with our mates next to us, that's when you play your best footy. That's when you get results, not forcing it, wanting to win, pushing passes. That's when it goes sideways for us.
And in Super Rugby tonight, the Highlanders and the Chiefs are making last-ditch effort to qualify for the playoffs. The Highlanders play the Waratahs in Invercargill, while the Chiefs play the Rebels in Melbourne. That's the news.
Tomorrow on Saturday morning, award-winning investigative journalist Louis Theroux, how he gets them talking. A history of the publishing house Faber and Faber, and she's been called the Oscar Wilde of YouTube. Natalie Wynn, her channel is ContraPoints. Saturday morning with me, Noelle McCarthy, in for Kim Hill after 8 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, showers turning to rain for a time tomorrow with possible thunderstorms. Auckland to Whanganui, including Coromandel and Central High Country. Fine and cloudy periods, the odd shower for Auckland and Taranaki. Mostly cloudy with showers tomorrow. Bay of Plenty, partly cloudy tonight, fine breaks tomorrow, some rain in the afternoon. Gisborne to Waitatapa, occasional rain, clearing about Gisborne and Hawke's Bay tomorrow morning. Manawatu to Wellington, cloudy periods, showers tomorrow. Nelson, fine and cloudy periods, brief rain tomorrow. Bulla and Westland, cloudy at times, occasional showers. Marlborough and Canterbury, low cloud, drizzle about the coast tonight, fine breaks inland, scattered rain at first tomorrow, clearing from the afternoon. For Otago and Southland, scattered rain tonight, clearing tomorrow morning, then fine spells. Rain again in Southland tomorrow night. Fiordland, occasional rain, possibly thundery late tomorrow. And Chatham Islands, a few showers, rain overnight, possibly heavy. You're with RNZ National. It's coming up to 9 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Susanna. There were gasps today as the man accused of the Mosque attacks pleaded not guilty to more than 90 charges of murder, attempted murder and terrorism. Brenton Tarrant was beamed into the High Court in Christchurch via video link and smiled as his lawyer entered the not guilty pleas this morning. Families and survivors who came to court told Checkpoint they were upset at the pleas, and the community was devastated nearly 3 months after New Zealand's worst terrorist attack. Annika Smith was at court and filed this report.
Very upset from the court. Why he said I'm not guilty? Why?
Emotions overflowed outside the Christchurch courthouse today as the families of those who died in the mosques emerged. The man accused of murdering their loved ones had just denied everything. Armed police guarded entrances to the court today, an unmarked armed offenders squad car at the ready. Inside, the accused appeared on a television screen wearing a grey jumper. His cut lip had healed since his first court appearance. Mental health reports found Brenton Tarrant was fit to plead, instruct counsel and stand trial. One of his defence lawyers, Shane Tate, entered not guilty pleas to the 92 charges. 51 murder charges, 40 attempted murder charges and one of terrorism. Outside the court, those injured in the attacks and the families of those who were killed tried to make sense of the hearing. Among them, Didar Hussain, who lost his uncle in the attacks.
When I came here, it's totally heartbroken because I lost the people. I lost our friend. Every Friday I go there, I sit down the person. Today Friday I'm going there, he's not here. He's not with me. All of them, 51, all of them.
Tamal Atachudu, who was shot 9 times in the Al Noor Mosque but survived, was also here today. He wasn't surprised to hear the accused plead not guilty.
Not surprised or what he said, he is not guilty or whatever he said, and we are strong.
Tight security and briefings with the families and media ensured the appearance ran smoothly inside, but it wasn't without incident outside. After the hearing, a man appeared to make race-related threats, telling the Muslim community they needed to be more respectful.
Ask for a bit of respect. I have a... You dirty bastard.
But Abdulaziz, who famously threw an EFTPOS machine at the alleged shooter as he fled the Linwood Mosque, was quick to stand up for himself.
You find that some dogs around, They tried to back up the white premises.
What did he say?
You should leave white premises alone.
The police stepped in and the man was taken to the police station next door. The families eventually made their own way home. Almost 3 months to the day since the mosque attacks, they now face a long wait until the trial in May next year. Yaman Nabi, who lost his dad in the Al Noor Mosque, is worried about how it will affect victims.
It's going to be hurtful for every family, if it's a witness, or I don't know how it's going to work, but it's going to be hurtful for family to, do a speech or, because they don't need any more, They've got a broken heart.
Many of these families say they'll be back when the accused next appears in August for a case review hearing. They say being there is important to stand up on behalf of those who can't.
And Annika Smith is outside the court now. Annika, that was today's proceedings. What happens next?
The accused will go to trial in May next year. An initial trial date of the end of February next year was initially set down. The court tries to bring serious cases to trial within a year of the arrest, but the sheer scale and complexity of this case meant this particular case was challenging. So Justice Mander has said it will go to trial on the 4th of May next year. There may be pre-trial hearings and appeals before then, and it gives the lawyers more time to prepare. It's thought it might take 6 weeks, but it's still early days, so we'll have to see. And the accused gunman will appear for a case review hearing in August this year.
Thanks, Annika. Annika Smith in Christchurch there. It is 13 minutes after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We're keen for your feedback. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Oranga Tamariki has removed a child from her foster home today, with the foster parents saying it's because they're Pasifika and the child is Pākehā. The 6-year-old girl that we'll call Sarah has high-level needs, and the foster parents she calls mum and dad say she's made incredible improvements over the last 9 months and wants to stay. They say they've forged an unbreakable bond, but the agency won't even allow them to help her transition to her new home. Oranga Tamariki disputes the family's version of events, and when the arrangement began last year, they allegedly told the foster mother the child was racist. But the foster mother says it's Oranga Tamariki that's racist, as the only explanation she's been given is the cultural issues have prompted the separation. Alex Perrottet and cameraman Nick Monroe were there early this morning when the child was controversially uplifted.
It's dark, it's cold, it's foggy. And this bicultural family is preparing the kids for school, getting them immaculately dressed in their school uniforms, making lunches, having breakfast. And all the while, the little Pakeha girl in their care hasn't the foggiest idea that these are the final moments she'll spend with them. Oranga Tamariki social workers arrive in 2 cars promptly at 7 a.m. 3 people walk up to the front door.
They basically just came to our front doorstep, and then we just had to start moving things into the car. It didn't even last long. And then had to walk her to the car, put her stuff in there, and said goodbyes. That didn't even last 2 minutes either. And that was it.
That's Sarah's foster mum or caregiver. In the driveway, there's small clouds of frosty breaths and a frosty silence between this family and the government agents. We watch from a distance. Small words whispered here and there as bags and boxes full of clothes and toys that they've bought the 6-year-old over the past year are loaded into the cars. It's what you're not hearing: the stifled sobs, the quiet tears, the huge lumps in throats. Her foster dad was too emotional to talk to us, devastated by what's happened. Sarah has called him Daddy from day one. And after the hugs goodbye, there was no drama or tantrum. Sarah's foster mum says despite all her grief and heartache this morning, the whole family has put on a brave face to try and make the departure as easy as possible for the little girl, who once again has to move on to a new beginning. If anything, she's getting used to meeting strangers and getting into their cars. But tonight she'll be in another new home, with new parents, in a new bed, before it sinks in that she won't see this adopted family again. When she's gone, the postponed grief hits home, and a void in the shape of a bubbly 6-year-old girl tears into their hearts. The question everyone here is asking is why?
One of the social workers told you she can't be here because she's Pakeha, you're not.
The supervisor told me that.
The supervisor?
Yes, at the time she told me that.
What did you say to her when she told you that?
I said, oh, okay, because they were the one that told me she was racist. But not once has she ever mentioned colour since being with us. But only from the social worker, this supervisor. So I said she was with a Pakeha family before who gave up on her and left her at the front of your doorsteps. So it's not a colour thing, it's a heart thing. And we just want what's the best for her, and obviously the best for her was being with us, because she started doing things she never thought she could do.
Like what?
Like going on swimming to the beach, having a shower on her own, basic things like brushing her teeth.
And these are things she didn't do before.
She was very fearful girl. And that's because she wasn't given opportunities to go out and explore. Where we have other children, and we've always found that children learn through experience. And so we always made it that every Saturday we will go out and do something, whether it's a walk in the park, going for ice cream, going to different places together as a family. And she'll always say, oh, this is my first time doing this, this is my first time doing that. Even when we gave her a surprise pool party for her birthday, she said she's never had a birthday before. So I got my sister to bake her a cake, and my other sisters to come in. We went to a barbecue, and she was shocked just how confident she was, and she was telling her sister like how she can swim now, she can go into the water without having to have us there, and that she could go down a slide, and all of that she couldn't do before. She didn't like getting her hair wet, and I found out she was never taught how to wash her hair.
And now she just wants to pass on that information, but can't. She was originally given a phone number to contact the new caregivers, but now she can't get through, and she's suspicious that all contact has been deliberately cut off. She can't pass on vital information about what food Sarah likes, what she likes to do, what parks she loves to visit, and how she reacts to those small but all-important expressions of affection, or even measured words of discipline from time to time. The young one is playing with toys, but only once everything is ready for school. There's a routine and an order in this house, and for a purpose. Mum is an experienced mother and carer, and knows exactly what children need. All children, no matter what their background.
Once you meet another family, it's a whole new routine. Everything else is different. So you gotta sit down with the child and just explain to them, and they'll get it. Every child that's gone through trauma, oh, they've got things raising up here, they've been moved around so many times. So just sit down with them, spend time with them, and you'll find out that, wow, this child can do it.
And all that expertise? Well, to Oranga Tamariki it seems to count for nothing.
Take it because I'm not European. Because that's what they said to me before. And then they used it again after, but it was in a better term. It's a cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah. So, and that's it. It's not, it's a heart thing.
We've been in touch with Oranga Tamariki, and they say that, amazingly, they say that you've got no credibility and what you're saying is not the truth. This is not a story. What do you say to that?
That's where I went wrong, because I didn't record anything. It's also taught me that whatever experience that I get to have with OT, to now make sure to note everything down, because they're gonna screw up again. So it's happened for decades. So it's not changing. It's still happening.
RNZ has obtained emails that show this breakdown in communication is not a one-off. Emails between Oranga Tamariki and another caregiver reveal critical feedback and overhanded responses. One caregiver complains, "It is not a very professional or polite way of doing things. Can someone with a bit of professionalism tell us what is going on?" Another email has a supervisor reacting to that, telling a caseworker, "I would advise you not to have them attend any of the meetings between new caregivers. I would use their comment at the bottom of their email below to not have them involved." Sarah's foster mum says the couple applied to be her permanent foster parents with the support of the 6-year-old's biological mother and grandmother. Sarah herself also wanted to stay. And Sarah's foster mum says it's not about her, but the children.
She told me that I couldn't let her go. And I felt like I've just broken that promise that I made to her.
Will you keep trying to do this? Will you try to foster another Pakeha girl?
Yes. Because at the end of the day, it's the child's life that matters. We can't keep ticking boxes just to ruin a life.
What do you want to say to Oranga Tamariki? What do you want to say to the government?
Your processes doesn't work for every case. One process doesn't always work for every case. Every case is different. Yes, there are some families that need you, but don't punish everybody else for those people. There are so many families that are hurting during this, especially children, and you're meant to be protecting our children.
And that's Sarah's now former foster mum talking to Alex Perete. We did approach Oranga Tamariki today, but the agency declined Checkpoint's request for an interview. And the Minister for Children, Tracy Martin, has also declined our interview request, saying it is an operational matter. But in the last couple of minutes, we have this statement in from Oranga Tamariki. It is from Glynis Sandland, who's the Deputy Chief Executive Services for Children and Families North. And in part, the statement says, there are many reasons why children may have to move between caregivers. The needs of the child or circumstances of the caregiver can also change. New opportunities to re-establish the child within their whānau of birth might become apparent, or there may be decisions made about the child's care through processes such as family group conferences or the family court. It goes on to say it is also important that any changes in care arrangements are responsive to the needs of the child, well planned, and that wherever possible the child or young person, their family or whānau, and both the leaving and receiving homes are involved in the planning. Oranga Tamariki sees it as important to keep children with whānau if at all possible. Children need support to maintain their culture and identity as a core part of their well-being. The child may be moved to a longer-term living arrangement such as permanent care with wider whānau or where a sibling is already being cared for. They go on to say, we understand just how wrenching this is for the transitional caregivers who have naturally grown to love this child. It is not something that can be easily put into words, and we can only offer our caregivers support as they work through it. We have also been looking into what was discussed with the caregivers. There were conversations about the new care arrangement, the difference between transitional and home for life care, about culture and identity, and about family ties, which we would have for children of any ethnicity. These were entirely appropriate social work conversations. We have not found any evidence of a conversation about not being able to look after the children because of race. And that is a statement from Oranga Tamariki. The government has sweetened its offer to striking teachers, and primary and secondary unions are recommending their members accept the revised deal. The new offer includes an extra $270 million, $71 million, to address pay parity between primary and secondary teachers, taking the total offer to nearly $1.5 billion. Here's our political reporter, Yvette McCullough.
Education Minister Chris Hipkins says he's hopeful the pay dispute, which saw primary and secondary teachers join forces for the country's first mega strike last month, will soon be over. The new offer includes a one-off cash injection to introduce a unified base salary scale for primary, secondary and area school teachers. Pay parity wasn't part of the teachers' original claim, and it only became clear it was the final barrier when all parties met last week.
I think what it shows is that everybody went into the discussions with a willingness to put all their cards on the table and to reach a settlement. And that's not a position that I was confident we were in before.
Chris Hipkins says the government wasn't being disingenuous in its steadfast denials it had any more money to offer.
I think in the context of $4 billion worth of claims, which is what we were dealing with, I think it was reasonable for the government. What I guess ultimately gave us the confidence to deal with the pay parity issue was the reassurance that both of the unions were going to endorse the deal and that this was going to draw the matter to a close.
NZDI President Linda Stewart says the fight around a teacher is a teacher was won more than 20 years ago, and protecting that was crucial.
Current teachers, we're saying, would see their base salary increase by at least 18.5% by July 2021 if they ratify.
PPTA President Jack Boyle says there are some key wins for secondary teachers too, with a new top salary step of $90,000.
Now, our principals 2 years ago, when we were talking about what we needed to see to support, recruit, retain secondary teachers, they were saying 90,000. So it's good to have seen that movement.
He says more money for teachers who take on extra responsibilities and duties will also make a big difference. The other cornerstone of this new offer currently has no price tag: the development of an accord between the unions and the government to identify and address workload and wider education issues. But for Nelson teacher Jackie Brown, who is leaving the profession because of the workload, this deal still doesn't go far enough.
Teachers don't teach because they want a massive income. They teach because they're passionate about what they're doing. I personally find the workload is kind of becoming untenable.
Christchurch teacher Thomas Newton says it's a great step forward, but it's taken a long time to get here.
It's disappointing that we had to go through such a large strike day and through such industrial manners to get the government to be a bit more honest with us.
Parents are welcoming the deal and the prospect of strikes being over.
We really need to stop all these disruptions, and actually the government should have done this some time ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly don't think the money is the sole issue, but yes, a move in the right direction.
I think there is too much on a teacher's plate at the moment.
However, the unions are stressing that this is in no way a done deal, and it's now up to their members to decide whether or not to accept it. Chris Hipkins says teachers should take it because it's a good deal. And this time, there is absolutely no more money to put on the table. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Yvette McCullough.
Coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, two tauranga kura cop flack for speaking Maori during netball games. Sarah Sanders is on her way out of the White House, and after 6 we're live with Health Minister David Clark on the thorny issue of DHB deficits. Do get in touch about anything you've heard on the program. You can text us on 2101, you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. And Susanna is here now with the headlines.
The man accused of the Christchurch Mosque attacks has frustrated victims and families in court today with his not guilty plea to dozens of charges of murder and attempted murder and one of terrorism. Brenton Tarrant smiled via video link from Auckland Prison at Pāremoremo when his lawyer entered the not guilty pleas in the High Court at Christchurch. The public gallery was packed with 2 overflow courtrooms made available for 140 people. Outside the court, families of shooting victims said they were disappointed the man's trial would not take place until May next year. And a 33-year-old man has been arrested and charged with disorderly behaviour after a scuffle outside the hearing. Members of the Muslim community were speaking to media when they were approached by a man who appeared to make race-related threats. Aucklanders face a busier commute this evening after disruptions to air travel and the city's rail network today. Travellers had to contend with heavy fog, flight delays around the country and the rail network at a standstill for an hour and a half after signal failure caused by a power outage. Netball New Zealand says it has no problem with te reo Māori being spoken on the netball court. The comment follows 2 tauranga kura saying parents and coaches from other teams have told them not to speak Māori during games because they can't understand them. Netball chiefs say they support te reo Māori being spoken in games and on the sideline. The Regional Economic Development Minister Shane Jones says the reopening of the Napier-Wairoa railway line today will mean more jobs. The line, which was closed 7 years ago after major storm damage, has been repaired with a $6.2 million investment by the Provincial Growth Fund. Washington has released video footage to back up its claim that Iran is behind attacks on 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. The footage shows an Iranian patrol boat pulling up to one of the damaged tankers and soldiers removing an unexploded mine from inside of the ship. Those are our latest news headlines on RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. Let's go to business news now with Kim Savage. Hi, Kim. Manufacturing activity, well, it's taken a bit of a plunge to the lowest level since 2012. Should we be worried about that?
Well, it's not necessarily good news. So this is the BNZ Business New Zealand Performance of Manufacturing Survey for May. And if we take a look at those figures for a moment, we did see a fall in May of 2.5 points to a measure of 50.2. So, of course, those are just numbers. What does that actually mean? A figure of 50 or above indicates expansion. So we're just heading towards that almost in decline mode, which is causing a little bit of concern among economists. Manufacturing, of course, makes up between 12 and 13% of the economy, so it's a reasonable chunk that we're talking about here, and the weakening in the sector doesn't really paint a particularly positive picture for growth here in New Zealand. If we break down the survey, you can look at different aspects of that manufacturing sector. So the production component of the survey, that was already in decline. We saw that already and continued. Employment going backwards as well, and new orders pretty much flat, and inventories building, so that the kind of stockpiles, I guess, are building up there. So we'll know a little bit more about how some of these factors are flowing through into the economy, how these numbers are affecting our economic growth going into next week. We'll get first quarter gross domestic product figures out on Thursday, which will tell us how the economy did in the first 3 months of the year, January through to March. And most economists' estimates or forecasts are that things have been a little bit downbeat, that things have slowed a little bit faster than maybe was expected. Some of those estimates ranging in the 0.6% to 0.4% range for that quarter growth, and in the sort of 2.2 to 2.6% annual growth for GDP. So we'll know more next Thursday how that first quarter of the year has gone, but it seems that economists are talking now about a second quarter growth slowing even further, possibly looking towards a pickup next year. But watch this space.
And Kim, the Chinese e-commerce giant, this is Alibaba, it wants to woo Kiwi businesses?
Well, there's wooing on both sides actually going on here. So Alibaba, and you know, if you didn't know much about it, is of course the major e-commerce, the major online marketplace over in China and in Asia, and it's actually expanded beyond that now. It's even involved in AI. It's kind of the Amazon, but sort of on an even larger scale. Basically, the world's largest retailer. And there's always a sense of, I don't know, is it pride perhaps, or something along those lines, when these sort of big global players kind of knock on our door and show a bit of interest in what business here in New Zealand is doing. So they're actually running an expo in New Zealand for the first time, and this is an opportunity for Kiwi entrepreneurs, businesses to showcase what they're offering, network with Chinese members of the Chinese community, also with people from Alibaba involved in merchandising, people who are buyers for Alibaba as well. So this is all happening in Auckland, and a good chance for businesses to really take a look at this. So Alibaba, in fact, has actually set up a wee a sort of local outfit here, I guess, with a country manager as well to run some New Zealand, try and get more New Zealand businesses onto its platforms. It's got a specific platform actually for global businesses trying to sell into China, and around 80% of the businesses on that platform have never sold into China before. So they're really trying to create a gateway for businesses internationally to get into that Chinese market, which of course has already proved lucrative for New Zealand businesses, and Alibaba is now trying to recruit more.
And Friday on the markets, how did that look?
Reasonably flat day. The NZX Top 50 index did finish slightly up, 11 points up, 0.1% roughly. That figure 10,235. And if we take a look at the currency, the New Zealand dollar trading at 65.3 US cents, 94.7 Australian, and 51.5 British pence.
Thanks, Kim. Kim Savage with our business wrap this Friday. Netball New Zealand is backing the use of te reo Maori on the courts after two tauranga kura copped complaints for speaking Maori during their games. But the Maori language schools say it's going to take more than words of support from top officials to stomp out ignorance. Our Maori News correspondent Lee Marama McLaughlin reports.
You can always expect a bit of hype and noise on the netball courts on a Saturday morning, eager players calling out for the ball and cheering each other on. But what happens if you're speaking te reo Māori? Just last weekend, a team of 10-year-olds at Te Kura o Matapihi got a rude awakening.
During the game, the coach of the other team approached our coach and asked her if she could instruct our tamariki to speak English, to which she responded no, and the other coach then asked why not, and she quite calmly just responded because that's the language that our children speak.
That's the kura tumuaki Tui Rolliston. She says the comments show ignorance towards te reo, which was an unwelcome eye-opener for her students.
It makes you actually a little bit upset really to think that people are out there requesting that they don't actually speak Māori. A little bit sad too, really.
And it's not an isolated incident. Another tauranga school, Te Warekura o Mauao, says it's no stranger to casual complaints about its use of te reo on the courts and sidelines. Its netball coordinator, Jamie Allen, says it got two formal complaints last year by people claiming te reo Māori should not be spoken during games because the other teams don't understand it.
I feel some of the feedback that we get is really cruel. It's really cruel and unfair, and it shows the ignorance that's still out there. But for a lot of people, it's such a common thing. But I'd never ever want that to hit the ears of our babies. You know, we're trying to revive our language. We're trying to carry forward what we know, what we've been given, and then these are the roadblocks that we come up against.
Bay of Plenty umpire Tania McDonnell says she was challenged last year when she decided to say the netball protocols in English and then in te reo Māori before a game with Te Warekura o Mauao.
And it was the centre manager who turned around and said that parents found it offensive that I spoke Māori to the players. And I says, but it's a national language. And they says, yeah, we don't do that here. And I says, well, now that I umpire here, yes, yous do.
Jamie Allen raised their concerns at a Harbourside Netball AGM last November. It was ruled that the Maori language should be allowed to be spoken. But the complaints keep coming in, and she wants to see action from top netball officials.
If we have a head honchos, Netball New Zealand, speaking and being accepting of Te Reo Māori, Te Ao Māori, that will filter down through the ranks to grassroots level. We've got to see the bigwigs walking the talk, as opposed to just saying, yeah, we're always supportive of this.
Netball New Zealand says there are no rules that restrict the use of te reo in netball or any suggestion that umpires should only speak English. Its spokesperson Kate Agnew says they value te reo Māori and are not happy about what's been going on.
It's disappointing that these kinds of situations have arisen, and so quite clearly this is something that we need to go back and revisit and reinforce the messaging and the position of Netball New Zealand.
The kura are calling for te reo Māori or bilingual signage at netball centres, and Miss Agnew says she's all for it and will look into it. As for te kura o Matapihi, they'll put last weekend's incident behind them when they take to the court tomorrow. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko Lee Marama McLaughlin tēnei.
Tensions have ramped up again in the Gulf after attacks on 2 oil tankers, which have also sent oil prices soaring. Explosions rocked the tankers and crews were forced to abandon ship in the Gulf of Oman. The US is blaming Iran, which has repeatedly warned it would block the Strait of Hormuz if it can't sell its oil due to US sanctions. Tehran has bluntly denied the allegations. The BBC's Lise Doucette reports.
This morning in the Gulf, a first oil tanker set ablaze, ignited by an explosion. Crew members on this Norwegian vessel were rescued by a passing cargo ship. An hour later, another tanker, Japanese-owned, also hit by an explosion. It's still not clear what caused these latest attacks in one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Today in Washington, unequivocal condemnation of Iran.
These unprovoked attacks present a clear threat to international peace and security, a blatant assault on the freedom of navigation, and an unacceptable campaign of escalating tension by Iran.
The attacks took place close to the strategic Strait of Hormuz, vital to world trade, where tensions have been mounting for months between regional rivals. On one side, there are Arab states, including key US allies in the Gulf. On the other side is Iran. At its narrowest point, the Strait of Hormuz is just 21 miles wide, and there are 2 lanes for tankers to pass in opposite directions. And a fifth of the world's oil exports, almost 19 million barrels a day, passes through. So attacks on tankers can threaten oil supplies, drive up prices, and fuel the tensions many worry could tumble towards war. This was meant to be a week of diplomacy. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is in Tehran, hoping to help ease tensions, only to see them escalate. Today he met Iran's top leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Iran calls the timing of these attacks suspicious and rejects any responsibility. Iran is also blamed for an attack yesterday on an airport in Saudi Arabia. 26 injured. Yemen's Houthi rebels aligned to Iran say this was their work. 2 weeks ago, King Salman called Arab and Muslim leaders to Mecca, Islam's holiest site, urging them to condemn Iran. Saudi officials told me then they don't want a war, but some sources spoke of a proportionate response. So what's next? Last month, the US moved an aircraft carrier and bombers to the Gulf. President Trump says he wants to talk to Iran. They won't, not while he imposes crippling economic sanctions. Everyone says they don't want a war, but everyone is on edge.
Lise Doucette reporting. It is about 17 minutes away from 6. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. It'll be the last chance saloon for Murupara when its only cash machine is replaced after the last one was ripped from the walls of the local credit union using a front-end loader last week. The small Bay of Plenty town has been without an ATM since June 3rd, and the bank has also stopped handling cash since the robbery. The ATM was found abandoned, but in one piece in a forest. It's not the first cash machine to bite the dust in Murupara, and the credit union has been considering whether or not it will bother giving it one last go with a replacement. The credit union's chief executive, Gavin Earle, shared the decision with Checkpoint.
Yes, Lisa, look, I'm really pleased to advise that the decision has been made to replace the ATM. Sadly, I guess for us and for the community, this will be the third ATM that we're installing in Murupara in the last few months. But look, after quite an extensive period, we've decided, of consultation with the local community, we've decided it's the best thing to do in the circumstances.
So the third one in the last few months, I mean, everybody knows what happened to the most recent one, but what happened to the others?
Well, there's been two attacks in the last couple of months, and the most recent one's been quite public, obviously. So that's just a reasonably new install after the previous one was damaged with another attack overnight as well. So what hope do you have for a fresh one? Look, we've been, our team on the ground have been working closely with the community since this happened and trying to understand what it is that the local community can do to help support us in protecting, what is a vital lifeline for that local community. So we've got high hopes that now the community, with our engagement process, they are listening and that they'll be working with us. We've got that commitment from them. And look, in return, we are committed to keeping a presence in Murupara. So what can they do, Gavin, to help you? Look, I think that's something that the local community need to keep working through. So at this stage, we've updated the community leaders of our board's decision to reinstall the ATM. So that's going to take us a few weeks to play out, obviously. So we need to think about what are we going to do to support the community in the meantime. So how long is the installation going to take for the new cash machine? Look, it's dependent on what resource we can get in there to repair what is extensive damage to the front of the building and then the install. So it could be up to a month. So we're working on some options to support the local people in terms of their cash needs over that time. And, essentially what we're talking about is offering our customers in Murupara, the NZCU Central customers, limited free transport service, probably once a week, back into our branch in Rotorua, where they can, by way of a shuttle, access cash at least once a week. So how much demand do you reckon there will be for that? Because some people might think, oh, well, these days, who uses cash? Most people pay with cards. Who is going to want that service and how much demand do you think there'll be? Oh, look, cash is still used quite extensively, and particularly in some of the smaller communities. So it's not all plastic in those small communities. And without being able to even use their cards to access cash, that is a problem. And so, we've talked, we've listened, and we've acknowledged the struggle of the local community if they don't have cash going forward. So first and foremost, we've agreed that, and we're committed to putting another machine in. But meantime, we need to think about, well, what can we do as, a different type of banking institution? We are customer-owned, to help our customer owners in that local community. So, we're working through the details of providing that shuttle service for our customers that are impacted in Murupara. And Gavin Earl says it isn't an easy call to replace the ATM and it's an expensive service to provide. And he's calling on Murupara locals to help them look after the new cash machine when it finally arrives. It is now about 12 minutes away from 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Let's get to some of your feedback now. This on Oranga Tamariki, the story we had earlier in the program about the removal of a Pākehā girl from her Samoan foster mother. Margot says Oranga Tamariki has regularly removed Maori children who are well bonded with their Pākehā foster parents because they say Maori children must be raised in Maori families. This policy works both ways, said Margot. It is politically correct at the same time as being racist. And Andrew has got in touch to say, I was driving home and when I heard the report about Sarah and Oranga Tamariki, I burst into tears. Pacifica people are warm, loving and family-oriented. This little 6-year-old girl is obviously thriving in their care. I have worked with socially disadvantaged children in my past and the main thing they need is love and stability. Clearly, with this family, she had both. This is outrageous and a travesty, says Andrew. Do keep your feedback coming. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz.
Australians have been farewelling one of their best loved and influential leaders. Thousands of dignitaries and politicians gathered inside the Sydney Opera House this afternoon to honour the life of former Prime Minister Bob Hawke, while hundreds sat outside watching on big screens. Mr Hawke died last month, aged 89. He was the longest-serving Labour Prime Minister, leading the country from 1983 to 1991. Elizabeth Brown has more.
I tell you what, any boss who sacks anyone for not turning up today is a bum.
That was Bob Hawke celebrating Australia's lifting of the America's Cup in 1983 and showing why he was considered Australia's everyday Prime Minister. He was a charismatic politician renowned for his love of beer and cricket, who rose through the ranks of the Union Movement and Labour Party to lead the country. At today's service, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, put partisan politics aside to lead the tributes.
So today I come to speak on behalf of a nation Bob Hawke loved and that deeply loved him in return. It was a great romance, played out in the shopping centres with journalists tripping over cables, sporting ovals, grandstands, schools, town halls, beaches, parks, outback stations and, of course, Indigenous communities all around the country.
Under Bob Hawke, Labour won 4 consecutive elections, and during his first term in office, he gained the highest popularity rating of any Prime Minister since the introduction of public opinion polls. He's credited for modernising the economy and bringing together businesses and unions in the pursuit of economic growth. Another former Prime Minister, Paul Keating, who served as Treasurer in the Hawke government, paid tribute to their great friendship and partnership, which he said had driven the longest reform period in the country's history.
Bob and I shared one primary idea, that Australia's creativity had been locked down by a stultifyingly paternal policy regime. The idea that the government knew best and that Australia was best protected and nurtured as a closed economy behind policy barbed wire. A framework that both the Labour Party and the Coalition then heavily subscribed to.
But the final tribute was left to Bob Hawke's wife, Blanche Daupouget.
With today's transformative service, we smile again. We glow with pride for the presence among us for almost 90 years of a great human being.
Others who also paid tribute and shared memories included former Labour leaders Julia Gillard and Kim Beazley, while flags on the Sydney Harbour Bridge flew at half-mast. For Checkpoint, Elizabeth Brown.
White House spokesperson Sarah Sanders, a fierce loyalist of President Trump who evolved into one of his closest advisors, will leave her job at the end of the month. Gillian Kitchener has more.
She's done an incredible job, but we've been through a lot together, and she's tough.
Sarah Sanders will be leaving her job as White House press secretary at the end of the month. Yet another high-profile departure from the Trump administration.
I couldn't be prouder to have had the opportunity to serve my country, and particularly to work for this president. It's one of the greatest jobs I could ever have. I've loved every minute, even the hard minutes.
Trump first made the surprise announcement in a tweet Thursday, saying, "I hope she decides to run for governor of Arkansas. She would be fantastic." Whether or not she runs for the position, once held by her father, remains to be seen. Sanders took over from Sean Spicer as press secretary in July 2017.
We won't release the full letter.
The 36-year-old has since drawn fire from the White House Correspondents Association, with Trump preferring to take questions himself from reporters. The last briefing was 94 days ago.
Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you soon.
Sanders is joining a long list of high-profile officials to quit the Trump White House. Others who have parted ways with the president include former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson.
Each of us get to choose.
Though this latest goodbye seemed to be on good terms.
And I want to thank you for an outstanding job. And thank you. Come. Thank you.
And Gillian Kitchener reporting there. Our next story involves a wild stag night in the Bay of Plenty, but maybe not the kind you are expecting. This particular evening unfolded last Friday when 90-year-old Whakatane man Bob McNeil was asleep in the caravan he's lived in for the past 23 years. His daughter Claire was staying and the pair was jolted awake when a huge stag, which was fleeing from hunters in the nearby bush, crashed into their place. Earlier today, Bob told me exactly what happened during the stag saga.
we woke up with a start, what's happening, dogs barking and that. And so anyway, then the next thing there was a crash, and the dogs had chased it round the corner, and at back I've got a great big sliding door on my awning, and it bent that badly and backed into my awning of the caravan.
So, Bob, this deer, while it was on the run, it comes barreling into your kind of your caravan setup there. You must have got a hell of a fright.
Yeah, well, we did, because it was the dogs barking and the squealing of the deer, the stag, that woke us up. And then, of course, it moved round the front of the van and backed in through the door. And then the hunters turned up then, they were hunting it. It was up in the bush way up behind us. And the dogs chased it. And, of course, as you know, a deer, that they can jump, like a stag, as they say at the races. And it just leapt over a 7-wire fence around the springs, around our area, just leap over that, no trouble, and finished up down by my caravan.
So what happened to the deer then? So did you come out and have a look?
Oh, yeah. It was kicking around in the awning, excuse me, and then the hunters arrived, you see, and they called the dogs off, and anyway, it had got into the awning then, and I could see it wasn't in the best of health, and anyway, I said to Claire, my daughter, I'll go out and see if I can drag it at all by the horns, and Claire said, "You're not going out that door, Dad. It'll tear you to pieces with its antlers." So I didn't go out the door at that stage. And then, anyway, the hunters turned up, and they said, well, we'll go back home. They lived down the main road further somewhere. They said, we'll go back home and come back with the truck, which had a winch on it, you see. They said, we'll winch the deer, the heavy deer, you can't lift them or anything. And they said, we'll come back with a winch and winch it out of the awning and onto the truck, you see.
So have you got
have
you got to share in the spoils, Bob, of the venison? Did you get to share in the spoils?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I got heaps. Yeah, the hunters really looked after me.
Are you fond of a bit of venison?
Oh, I've got heaps of venison. Yeah, I gave it. I gave most of it to the owners of the camp, and they distributed it around to anyone that liked deer, that liked venison.
Fantastic.
Oh no, the hunters were very good, and they also gave me some money for any damage it had done. You see, out in the awning.
And did you get
a couple of things like a heater and a fan that had got wrecked with it in there,
So, Bob, did you get a good trophy picture with the deer?
My daughter, Claire, she took a whole lot of photos. And once the deer had died, I knew it was dead. I went out, and so I was sitting like riding a horse, you see, sitting astride of the deer, and I held its antlers up, Oh, well, that's my trophy sort of thing.
Bob the Conqueror. Hey, so tell me, how long have you been living in the park there?
I've been living there for 23 years.
That's a long time to be in a caravan park, Bob. Do you just like the lifestyle? Or?
It's a lovely life.
And Bob, it sounds like there's never a dull moment if your life is anything to go by.
You're dead right. The owners there down at the shop, you see, Kevin and Fiona Haig, they own the place. And they said nothing ever happens down here. It always happens up there. They call it Awakeri Heights where we are. We're sort of up a little bit on a bit higher ground. And they were going crook because they said nothing ever happens down here at the shop. It always happens up there.
And if you want to check out exactly what happened at Bob's place, go on to our Facebook page and website and you can see those photos and the video of Bob wrangling the stag there. Time for a little bit of your feedback regarding the story about the Pākehā girl taken from her Samoan foster mum. Lyle says, I know numerous brown people who have been fostered by white people. The opposite seemingly isn't allowed. And on the subject of te reo on the netball court, Liz says it's incredibly disappointing to hear some people are arrogant enough to think te reo has no place on our country's netball courts. It's time they drag themselves into contemporary New Zealand life and wake up to how enriched we all are by embracing te reo in our vernacular. Netball New Zealand needs to step up. And this person says, Megan, actually from Auckland, says several teams that my kids have played have used Arabic and Hindi. I have no issue with other languages being used on the court or field, and it is appalling that some have an issue with te reo being used. Racist, she says.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Leia tawa tēnei. Family members of those killed in the Christchurch Mosque attacks are frustrated by today's not guilty pleas. Brenton Tarrant this morning pleaded not guilty to 91 charges over the Christchurch Mosque shootings and will go to trial in May. Rachel Graham has more.
Family members of those killed reacted with shock in court to the not guilty plea and the news that the case won't get to trial for almost a year. Dida Hussain's uncle was killed in the attacks, and he says the slow court process is very hard on the families. He had hoped to hear good news at court today, but said he was instead left heartbroken. Yaman Nabi, whose father was killed in the attack, says the trial will be very hurtful for the families and witnesses if they have to give evidence. Hila Uden says the not guilty plea was frustrating to hear, as was seeing the accused man smiling in the dock. In Christchurch, this is Rachel Graham.
Name suppression has been lifted for 31 wounded mosque victims. 6 applied to the court to have suppression lifted, but until today the other names could not be published. 3 retain name suppression as they are under 18 years of age. The Mayor of Christchurch says it's time to reflect on attitudes to racism. Leanne Dalzell was speaking at a Trans-Tasman conference in Auckland today, organised by the Shakti Community Council, a migrant and refugee support organisation. Politicians, human rights lawyers and community workers from New Zealand and Australia shared their experiences of racism, saying it's important to speak up. Ms Dalzell told the audience she's proud of the compassionate response to the March 15 attacks by Cantabrians and the rest of the country.
What happened in Christchurch in New Zealand on Friday, March 15, 2019 will never define us. It is the response that says who we are. However, it is time to reflect on what we want to be in the future. Do we go back to where we were, complacent about racism, or do we boldly step forward?
Leanne Dalzell speaking in Auckland today. Reaction has been mixed from frontline teachers on today's pay offer from the government. The unions for primary and secondary teachers want their members to accept the new deal, which includes a one-off $271 million boost to create a unified base salary scale for primary, secondary and area school teachers. A Napier High School teacher, Bevan King, says while the deal is a step in the right direction, the government's slow-footed response has been disappointing.
To be honest, I'm one of these people I hate the whole bargaining strategy thing. I think you should be up front, and it shouldn't be who can play hardball the best. But it's a shame that we have to go on strike to get even to this point. And it's a shame that kids have to be rostered home to get to this point.
Bevan King also believes a salary increase doesn't look after the young teachers who are most in need. National Health spokesperson Michael Woodhouse is backing the decision to appoint a Crown Monitor at Canterbury District Health Board. The Health Minister David Clark says the DHB has the largest deficit of any at more than $103 million. He's named a former Auckland Health Chief, Lester Levy, as his representative on the board, saying Dr Levy will begin immediately. Mr Woodhouse says Canterbury DHB's finances have deteriorated dramatically.
In the last 2 years, there has been about a threefold increase in the deficit from between $20 and $30 million from memory to over $100 million now, and that is a very, very sharp descent and a challenge to their financial viability going forward.
National's Michael Woodhouse. The Regional Economic Development Minister Shane Jones says the reopening of the Napier-Wairoa railway line today will mean more jobs, and not just locally. The line, which was closed 7 years ago after major storm damage, has been repaired with a $6.2 million fund from the Provincial Growth Fund. Speaking from abroad for the first train to leave Napier this morning, Mr Jones says the government's $1 billion commitment for rail in the budget will have benefits beyond freight and business.
With the $1 billion, we're going to see a massive increase in the members of young men and women who are going to come in as apprentices. And that's the mission of the government. It's not just sending everyone to university, it's enabling people to learn as they earn.
Shane Jones says the fund is about ensuring the regions have the right investment to flourish. A collection of more than 50 love letters written by Canadian singer-songwriter Leonard Cohen to the woman who inspired So Long Marianne has sold for more than $900,000. The archive of letters from Cohen to Marianne Illen chronicles their 1960s love affair and the blossoming of Cohen's career from struggling poet to famous musician. Cohen and the Norwegian-born Illen met on the Greek island of Hydra in 1960, and she became the inspiration for several of his best-known songs, including Bird on a Wire, Hey, That's No Way to Say Goodbye, and the 1967 track So Long Marianne. Illen died in Oslo in July 2016 at the age of 81. Cohen died in November 2016 at the age of 82. It's 6:05. All of Canada is celebrating the Toronto Raptors' history-making NBA basketball win. The Raptors beat two-time defending champions the Golden State Warriors 114-110 in Game 6 of the best-of-7 series to give them a 4-2 win. It's the first time a Canadian side has won the NBA title and sparked celebrations not seen in downtown Toronto since the Toronto Blue Jays won the Major League Baseball World Series in 1993. The weather could have a deciding hand in the Highlanders' last-ditch bid to qualify for the Super Rugby playoffs tonight in Invercargill. The Highlanders are 3 points outside of the top 8 and need a bonus point win over the New South Wales Waratahs and have other results go their way if they're to make the playoffs. To do that, they must score at least 3 more tries than the Waratahs, and while the Highlanders won't have the benefit of the covered Dunedin Stadium to help their cause, assistant coach Glenn Delaney says they're well prepared for wet weather rugby.
I think Invercargill it might well start raining and possibly stop at Christmas, so it could be a wet one, but that's great. You know, we've had outdoor training been wet, so we're getting used to what's potentially coming, preparing for every eventuality. The Chiefs are also battling for a playoff spot tonight. They play the Rebels in Melbourne and need a bonus point win to advance. England's Justin Rose has a one-shot lead after the opening round of the US Golf Open in California. Rose, who won the title in 2013, shot a 6-under par 65. New Zealand's Ryan Fox had a disappointing first round, cutting a 3-over par 74, while Wellington amateur Daniel Hillier shot a 5-over 76. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Country Life's sorting out the wheat from the chaff at this year's Agricultural Field Days. It's also the final episode of one of the finest rural broadcasters in the business, Susan Murray. Pitch Black is this week's Friday Night Live act, recorded at Wanaka by Andre Upston back in 2000. But if you'd rather see red, there's a sonic tonic dedicated to blood in honour of the element iron on Nights of me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, showers turning to rain for a time tomorrow with possible thunderstorms. Auckland to Whanganui, including Coromandel and Central High Country. Fine and cloudy periods, the odd shower for Auckland and Taranaki. Mostly cloudy with showers tomorrow. Bay of Plenty, partly cloudy tonight. Fine breaks tomorrow. Some rain in the afternoon. Gisborne to Wairarapa. Occasional rain clearing about Gisborne and Hawke's Bay tomorrow morning. Manawatu to Wellington, cloudy periods, showers tomorrow. Nelson, fine and cloudy periods, brief rain tomorrow. Bulla and Westland, cloudy at times and occasional showers. Marlborough and Canterbury,
Low cloud, drizzle about the coast tonight, fine breaks inland, scattered rain at first tomorrow, clearing from the afternoon. Otago and Southland, scattered rain tonight, clearing tomorrow morning, then fine spells. Rain again in Southland tomorrow night. Fiordland, occasional rain, possibly thundery late tomorrow. And Chatham Islands, a few showers, rain overnight, possibly heavy. You're with RNZ National. It's coming up to 6:09.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. The Canterbury District Health Board is so far in the red, the government's appointed a Crown Monitor in a bid to help improve its financial performance. It's not alone, but it is the worst. The total deficit across our DHBs is expected to hit $390 million at the end of the month. The Canterbury DHB is forecasting a year-end deficit of $103.4 million. Health Minister David Clark says it's not sustainable, and he joins me now. Good evening, Minister.
Good evening, Lisa.
In terms of the Canterbury DHD, give us the roadmap out of the hole. What does it look like exactly?
Well, as Minister, I have under the Public Health and Disability Act the ability to appoint a Crown Monitor to assist the DHB to improve its performance. The Monitor can attend DHB board meetings and have access to all documentation provided to the board. They are there to observe the decision making, convey the policies of the government so that they can be reflected in board decisions, and advise the Minister on any matters relating to the DHB, and that includes the long-term sustainability of the DHB. They give the government confidence when it's investing significant money, public money, as it does in the public health system, that there is a path to sustainability if things are looking a bit rocky at any given time.
OK, well, the thing is, the salaried medical specialists say that a Crown Monitor is just scare tactics and it doesn't really do much to improve the financial position of DHBs. Is that right?
Look, I respectfully disagree with that. I've appointed Crown Monitors to counties Manukau and Waikato previously.
Yeah, how's counties Manukau's debt tracking compared to when they didn't have a monitor?
It's tracking down, Lisa, so it's a really good news story. The Crown Monitor has got in there. They have worked with the management. The management...
They're still projecting $53 million deficit, is that right, Minister? Projecting $53.5 million deficit in counties?
My understanding is that they're improving that position. So, the advice that I've got is that actually has been helpful to have the Monitor in there. Also, it's the changes that have been made at board level and at management level there. So I've got increasing confidence in counties Manukau, but we're watching it closely.
Right, so what do you think the number will be then if you're saying that there's going to be an improvement on that $53.5 million? Deficit?
I don't have an exact number in front of me, Lisa, but I'm told it's already improving on that number.
OK, but you can't say how much?
No, I wouldn't like to get that wrong on the or put your crook on it, but I am aware that it's improving from that position. OK, so installing a monitor, is that kind of like a precursor to getting rid of the whole board? It's not necessarily, no. So in the case of counties Manukau, I hope that, to choose that example, that we will continue to see improvement and that we would eventually, with time, not need a Crown Monitor in that situation.
What about Canterbury DHB? Are you considering options with the board there?
Well, today is day one. The Crown Monitor will start immediately at getting an assessment on the financial position that they're in and the sustainability of that position. I do want to.
But how long do you leave it? How long do you leave it before you escalate? So, what period of time are you ring fencing to say, if I don't see an improvement by then, I'm going to step up action?
There is no legal period of time. So in the case of Waikato, for example, where I put in a Crown Monitor, I've moved reasonably quickly to put in commissioners because the Crown Monitor who was in there said, look, there is clinical risk here, there is financial risk, you need to move to take extra steps because I don't think you're in the right position with the Waikato DHB. So it's the job of the Crown Monitor to go in there to get a good assessment. We've appointed a very experienced person in Dr. Lester Levy.
But as Minister, you must have an idea. Sorry to interrupt, but as Minister, you must have an idea of how long you're prepared to wear this, how long you're prepared to carry deficits of this nature. So how long are you giving the Canterbury DHB to turn things around?
Well,
Lisa, these are not simple things. These DHBs are stressed and strained from years of underfunding, and the Canterbury DHB has provided excellent services. We think back in terms of the response to the quake, the terror attacks of March 15. Their clinical responses have been superb, in my view. So we want to pick apart things. This is about making sure that those excellent clinical responses are sustained into the future, that they actually have modern ways of doing their business, and that they are appropriately funded. And the Crown Monitor's job is to get in there, to work with the DHB board to make sure that they're in a financially sustainable position.
Right. If they deliver great services, how is it that they are so far in the red? Surely you're not suggesting that that's all from either, that can all be clawed back through efficiencies. So what's the issue there?
It's a matter of understanding, how much of the challenges they're facing are legacies of the quakes, how much is about the way that they do their business, as it were. I mean, the DHBs are constantly making changes. There are new ways of operating, new models of care. Things can be done more efficiently and effectively, but that sometimes requires investment up front, and that's sometimes why DHBs will struggle in one year and not another year, because they're investing in change.
Okay.
So we need to have a really detailed picture of that, and I need to be able to assure the Minister of Finance that there's a sustainable path into the future.
All right, there's a bit more that I want to get through, and we're running out of time. So Treasury, what has Treasury told you about the risk of the DHB's debt levels? How serious are they telling you this is?
Well, the Treasury, I spend a bit of time worrying about it. At one level, we invest $18 billion in the health system each year, and you could say, well, these are not big numbers compared to that, but they actually are. If we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money, we need to be very, very sure that when this money is being spent on services, that it's being spent the best way possible.
So
we have a truly world-class health service, and we just need to be sure that it's sustainable into the future.
So this level of deficit, is it keeping Treasury awake at night?
Well, it keeps me awake at night. You'd have to ask the Treasury
but what have they
feel
said to
about
you?
it.
What have they said to you?
Treasury, of course, always advise the Minister of Finance to keep an eye on things. They have expressed their concern, as best I'm aware, about the Canterbury situation. It's up to both the Minister of Finance and I to make decisions that give us the confidence that we're investing this money well. And I'm, confident of the care. We just need to be sure that it's sustainable into the future.
Let's turn to the Southern DHB now. In 2017, you told this program it was the second most poorly funded DHB and that people in the South were not getting the treatment they deserve. Has that improved on your watch?
The DHB has had a good deal of money invested in it. It's had commissioners in place. I supported, from opposition, the government in appointing commissioners to that DHB.
So are people there now are they now getting the treatment they deserve in that catchment?
They are always, like every DHB, striving to give the best possible care to the people that they care for in their area.
So best possible care is different from treatment they deserve. So are they getting the treatment they deserve, which is what you were concerned
Lisa,
about when you were in opposition?
Lisa, I want to see our public services, our public health service grow and be strengthened. It was underfunded for 9 years under the previous government. There is a legacy of underfunding. We can't fix that all in one or two budgets, but we are certainly investing in our public health system at the moment. So
is it still underfunded and the deficits are getting worse? Is that what you're saying?
I would separate out the issue of deficits and talk about changes in models of care, and certainly the Southern DHB is investing at the moment in changes to ensure that it does primary care in a more modern and effective way. That requires investment up front, and that does cost money. So with a commissioner in there, we've got oversight over how it's making those changes currently.
You also said at that time that patients were waiting 7 months for urgent surgery and that wait should only be a month. So can you tell us what the wait is now?
Well, in different areas,
I'm talking about Southern.
Different waits.
Yeah.
Sorry, for different clinical practices, it'll be different periods of time, Lisa, whether it's orthopaedic surgery or whether it's...
Can you give us a ballpark, Minister? Are the waits within a time frame that you're comfortable with, given your comments that they were too long previously?
I haven't... got Southern's exact details in front of me, but I am aware that, for example, they've struggled with ophthalmology. Late last year, they did get those wait lists down again, but we're constantly watching that because it's challenging to find the specialists that provide that care. They are working hard to improve, as all DHBs are, on their wait times. And of course, at every stage, they prioritise acute care. People who need it right now get it straight away, and that is imperative in our health system. There's a constant reprioritisation going on, and as I say, there's that legacy of underfunding, but we're investing more and we have high expectations of our DHB.
I want to touch quickly on the situation with birthing facilities. Multiple babies born outside of primary birthing facilities in the southern DHB district recently. You will be acutely aware of this. One doctor has said you need to urgently review this situation or a life could be lost. Are you going to review it? Personally, I've been a bit frustrated and disappointed at the way the DHB has gone about the implementation of this change. I've been assured that the plan they have is a good one to serve the needs of their population, but the actual implementation of it has caused me some frustration from afar. So have you spoken to Chris Fleming about it?
I certainly have spoken to the THB at different times.
But this week...
Can I tell you, Lisa, that they have now assured me that they're going to have independently reviewed the implementation of that, and I think that's the right thing to do.
And by when do you expect that review to be complete?
I haven't had that detail confirmed yet. I think they are searching for the right independent person right now, and that's important that they do have the right independent person to lead that work.
Thanks for your time this evening. That is Health Minister David Clark. It is 19 minutes after 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. If you want to get in touch about the interview or any of our stories tonight, you can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Those who were injured or lost loved ones in the Christchurch Mosque attacks now have an anxious wait until the accused gunman's trial in May next year. Brenton Tarrant smiled via video link from Auckland Prison when his lawyer entered not guilty pleas for more than 90 charges at the High Court in Christchurch this morning. That was for 51 murder charges, 40 attempted murder charges and 1 of terrorism. Gasps of disbelief were heard from the public gallery as the accused's lawyer, Shane Tate, read his not guilty pleas. Mental health reports also found the accused was fit to plead, instruct counsel and stand trial. Outside the court, family members and those injured in the mosque attacks were trying to make sense of what happened.
Today he said that he's not guilty, so it's very frustrating, and if the process is also very lengthy, we don't know yet when it will finish. During next year, maybe February or May. So it's a very lengthy process. We watch him on the screen, so it's very hard here, I feel very sad.
I lost my uncle, Dr. Abdul Samad, yes. Just destroy our heart when you see the smiling face. You shouldn't do that. But the judge said it will take longer the next year, May, which is long times. We don't want to. We want to as soon as they can do it for us. Make me happy.
Not surprised what he said, he is not guilty or whatever he said. We are strong. That's all what I will say.
Why he said I'm not guilty? Why? And then, what else? Is he playing ping pong with us?
You're very upset, is it from what
I'm very upset from the court. Yes, and this is my son. I lost my son. This is a hero. This is my son, Hussein Al-Umari.
It was important to hear what they have to say, and the judge say, I don't know how it's going to work, but it's going to be hurtful for family to, do a speech or, because they don't need any more, they've got a broken heart, so they don't need to, there's no word to say, it's all on the screen.
And teachers say a new sweeter deal being offered by the government goes a long way to addressing their concerns over pay and working conditions. The new offer is worth an additional $271 million, taking it to a total of nearly $1.5 billion, despite the government previously saying there was no more money available. Education Minister Chris Hipkins says a key element of the revised offer is a unified base salary scale for all primary and secondary teachers, which will restore pay parity across the levels. Nita Blake-Person reports.
It's been a long slog for teachers working to improve their pay and working conditions. Today's new offer includes a lump sum payment of $1,500 for union members and a new top step salary rate of $90,000. It also includes salary rises of around 3% on the 1st of July this year and each of the next 2 years, as well as a $5 million a year professional development fund for conferences and seminars. Teachers we spoke to were cautiously optimistic.
So my name is John, and I'm a physics maths teacher at Marlborough Boys College in Blenheim, South Island, and I intend to accept the offer. I think it goes away to rewarding teachers sufficient money that we will attract the young ones, but more importantly maintain and keep those who are, because we've lost too many young teachers, and it will, I think, give incentive for others to stay. It might keep some of us here to mentor these younger teachers and encourage them to stay and help, hopefully, them through.
I'm Raywin. I teach in the Coromandel area, technology, and I'm nearing retirement age, so this is really important to get a step in the right direction so we have retention of our teachers.
My name is Paul Stevens, and I have been teaching for 5 years, and I teach art on the North Shore. I think the offer is a really good move in the right direction. It lifts the pay for teachers who have been in the profession for a while, and it puts people like me who have been in the profession and want to stay there, gives us something to work for in terms of pay and reason to stay in the profession.
That news will come as a relief to Education Minister Chris Hipkins, who is optimistic the latest offer will avoid any more strikes at schools. He maintains the government was not being disingenuous by previously saying there was no more money available for teachers.
I think in the context of $4 billion worth of claims, which is what we were dealing with, I think it was reasonable for the government to draw the line and say quite clearly, look, we have to stop moving. What we, I guess, ultimately gave us the confidence to deal with the pay parity issue was the reassurance that both of the unions were going to endorse the deal and that this was going to draw the matter to a close.
But he says beyond this offer, there really is no more money available. The Post-Primary Teachers Association and the New Zealand Educational Institute have both recommended that their members accept the offer. For Checkpoint, Nita Blake-Person.
Veteran Warriors forward Adam Blair is set to join an exclusive club of rugby league players tonight. All going to plan, Blair will become just the third New Zealander to play 300 NRL matches as his team faces the Titans on the Gold Coast. For a boy from the tiny Northland community of Pangaru, it's a milestone he could never have dreamed was possible. Ravinda Hunia has the story.
Here is
During his almost 14 seasons in the NRL, Adam Blair has been one of the hardest men in one of the world's most brutal sporting competitions. Forget shying away from them, the 33-year-old thrives on rugby league's bone-rattling collisions. Blair says the matches have flown by since his 2006 NRL debut and adds the unlikely marriage of an all-out playing style with longevity has required just as much off-field effort.
You know, I was happy to play 1 game, 10 games, 20 games, 50 games, and then I much when I got to 100, I just stopped counting. I guess it represents consistency in everything you've done on and off the field. You know, I'm pretty consistent off the field with what I do, and it's much really given me this opportunity to play 300.
It's a number only 2 other Kiwis, Ruben Wiki and Simon Mannering, 4 Warriors and 35 players in total have ever reached. While maybe not at this level, Blair says success, and whatever it took to get it, was the only thing on his mind when he left behind everything he had known and headed for Australia aged 16.
You know, I didn't want to be that person that failed and went away and came back to Pangaru or Whangarei. And all the mates ask you what happened. Again, I'm, I guess, a competitor, and I put a lot of pressure on myself, and if it didn't work out over there, I was staying over there anyway, so I didn't have those people asking me the questions.
Blair admits that competitive drive still gets the better of him at times, but it's something teammates, first at the Melbourne Storm, then the West Tigers and Brisbane Broncos, and now the Warriors know well. Warriors playmaker Cody Nikorima says it's far from the only defining trait of the man who was there when Nikorima made his NRL debut at the Broncos.
He's always done the right thing off the field for his body, and things that he brings to teams that go unnoticed is just those little things that stats can't tell. He's always been big on that, and I think that's why, these coaches sign him. I know Wayne Bennett had big raps on Blair, and he was actually sad to see Blair go.
After a poor start to the season, which saw him dropped to the reserve grade side, Blair has had to draw heavily on those qualities. But Warriors captain Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, for one, isn't surprised to see the 49-test Kiwis international back in the top team.
He's put his hand up for a few things, but he's back in the side doing his bit. But that's him, he fell off the horse a bit, but he's back on it, and he's trying again, and that's him. 300 game, he just turns up and does the little things right.
Despite the achievement, Blair's focus tonight is where it always is, doing everything he can to help his team win. There will, though, be a small chance for reflection. When he lies down for a moment in the changing rooms, as he does before every match, Blair says he'll be able to take the field for match number 300 with a quiet sense of satisfaction.
When you look at it, people that have done it before, it's quite an achievement. I'm just really lucky to be able to even play one NRL game. And at some point, when I first started off, that most probably I wasn't even going to play NRL. So to be able to be up, in the 300, it's pretty cool.
Even cooler, no doubt, if he can cap the milestone moment with a much-needed Warriors win. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko Ravinda Hunia tēnei.
And let's stay with the sports theme here. More feedback on some people moaning about te reo being spoken on the netball courts. Leanne has got in touch and says, oh, for goodness sake, how petty. How wonderful that a group of students who are so fluent in te reo that they can use it on the netball court. Good on them, and shame on those who objected. Leanne says, are those same people going to object to the French, Fijians, Tongans, Samoas, Japanese and others using their native tongue on the rugby field during the Rugby World Cup? Get a grip, people, she says, and come into the 21st century. Lots of feedback on the Pākehā girl uplifted from her Samoan foster mum. A lot of you don't like it. This person says, I hope the Samoan family continue to fight to have her back. I could hardly believe the story of the 6-year-old and agree that Oranga Tamariki, in this case, do not have the well-being of that little girl at heart. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate your company. Do have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Family members of those killed in the Christchurch Mosque attacks are frustrated by today's not guilty pleas from the man accused of killing 51 people and injuring many more. The primary and secondary teachers' unions are recommending their members accept the government's new pay offer. Netball New Zealand says it has no problem with te reo Māori being spoken on the netball court. And the Green Party co-leader Marama Davidson is joining calls for changes to Oranga Tamariki's Uplift process. Those are the headlines. Our next news will be at 7.
Take the pulse of the day's news every weeknight at 10.
Beverage containers, we have about 5 million that are consumed each day by average Kiwi.
Lately with me, Karen Hayes, your late night eye on the latest headlines and the people who are making them.
And, I think a lot of men hear a lot of criticism and denigration these days.
Live with local, national and international stories as they happen.
What we have to do is understand that we're in a moment of battle.